We're going to get started now. So thank you so much for joining me here on this webinar. So I thought it was necessary to just do an overview so far. And the beautiful thing is that there are schemes cropping up left, right, and center for the funding of small businesses and businesses in general through these very, very difficult times. But what I thought I would do is just do a little bit of a review of what funding is currently available in the market. You'll notice, by the way, and let me start by saying this, you'll notice that I haven't included the Sakuma Fund. And you'll notice equally that I haven't included anything in relation specifically to the Oppenheimers or the Mutsepis, although that is released through the through business partners, the Industrial Development Corporation's a rollout mechanism. So let's start. And the reason, by the way, that I haven't included Sakuma is because Sakuma is at its threshold in terms of application. It's way beyond its threshold. The Sakuma Fund, I think, will continue because my feeling is that they are trying as best they can to make sure that they secure additional funding for Sakuma because, quite frankly, of how successful it has been. I don't know if anyone online has had success. I know a lot of people have applied. I don't know if anyone online has had success with Sakuma. But certainly, I think that it didn't touch sides in terms of the need out there. And I think we are forever grateful to people like Johann Rupert and the Oppenheimers for what they've done, to the Motsepe Foundation, and essentially Sanlam for what it has done through the Motsepe Foundation. So let's start with what we know is still on the table. We're talking about the COVID-19 relief and support options. And quite frankly, they call it a multidisciplinary approach because it is multiple government departments that are putting these things together, if not providing the funding for these things. So the Unemployment Insurance Fund is where we will start. The options act as a safe net for employees arising from, amongst other things, closing of businesses directly impacted by the national lockdown, unemployment, illness, quarantine of employees, or reduced time offered by employers. Now, let me say this, that everything other than the first one, which is closure of businesses directly impacted by the national lockdown, so everything other, the unemployment, the illness and quarantine of the employee, reduced time offered by employers, all of those options are there basically for the employee to apply for. Whereas the first option, which is businesses directly impacted by the national lockdown, they are the businesses themselves will apply to the Unemployment Insurance Fund for payment in that regard. So everything else, unemployment, illness, quarantine, short time, etc., all of those things are for the employee to apply for. It's only the national lockdown impact for which the companies will apply to the UIF for. The benefits claimable by the employees range from R0 if the employer pays the employee during the period, this is for the lockdown, to the difference between the benefit level and the amount received by the employee from the employer, where the employer, by the way, can dip into a leave rather than into their own bank account or cash flow. Subject to a maximum, and employees may not earn more than they would ordinarily earn. So that's the Unemployment Insurance Fund. Now, specifically, the temporary employer relief scheme, which is capped at 17,702 Rand. And we have covered this previously. If any of you want the dedicated webinar and presentation on the temporary employee relief scheme, please just either WhatsApp me or send me an email and I can send it to you if you haven't got it already. But in summary, the COVID TRS states that should an employer, as a direct result, close its operations for 3 months or lesser period and suffer financial distress, the employer shall qualify for a COVID-19 temporary relief benefit. The employer will qualify for that benefit. These benefits are delinked from the normal UIF benefits and from the normal TRS benefit. The salary benefits are calculated in terms of Unemployment Insurance Act and are the same as maternity leave benefits. Benefits calculated on a UIF sliding scale, ranging from 38% at the highest level to 60% at the lower level. And for those employees who are earning 3,500 Rand or less, 100%. I think it's important to emphasize, as we've done previously, that the scale at which the UIF TR scheme stops is 17,702 Rand per month. and any employee earning more than this will only get 38% of that, which is essentially 6,726 Rand and 76 cents. So let me say this. There is no limit in terms of the size of company that can apply for TER for its employees. And in fact, there is no point at which the entitlement stops. UIF is an insurance policy. So essentially, any individual who pays UIF or on whose behalf UIF is paid is entitled in their own right to approach the Unemployment Insurance Fund for payout against that insurance policy. Should they lose their job, should they go on short time, should they lose income because they are sick, not sick leave, but should they lose income because they are sick, then the employees are entitled to approach the UIF directly, and the employers are entitled to approach the UIF to fund on the sliding scale the 3-week lockdown, or if lockdown is extended up to a maximum of 3 months at this stage. 30 billion Rand has been set aside for the UIF for the next 3 months, of which 10 billion Rand is there for the UIF TER scheme, and the other 20 billion Rand there is for the balance. By the way, that was originally a 30 billion fund dedicated to TER, but the UIF over the last week has done some goalpost shifting, I would say, as they become more aware of their actual budgets, income and expenditure budgets, as is reasonable given how quickly they had to introduce the new TER scheme. So the TER benefits extend the UIF. So this is important. If during temporary employee layoff because of lockdown, illness is incurred, then the COVID-19 TRS benefit will extend the UIF illness benefit to employees who are quarantined for 14 days because of COVID, irrespective of whether the employee is ill or not. The only thing that is required is a doctor's note to the effect of them being quarantined, but they don't need to be ill for that purpose, just suspected of needing to be in quarantine. So in other words, not only will you qualify for the TRS for the employee, but if the employee goes into quarantine, in their own respect, they can apply for the TRS illness benefit as well. Please feel free to ask any questions. All you have to do is unmute your microphone to do that. So that's the first UIF scheme. The next UIF scheme is the National Disaster Benefit, which is capped at 3,500 Rand per employee per month. In the event that an employer decides as a direct result of COVID to close its business and send employees home, the employer can apply for the National Disaster Benefit. Unlike the TRS benefit, which requires a company to be in financial distress, the National Disaster Benefit seemingly only requires an employer to shut its business, but not necessarily be in distress, and it's not asked to prove that it's in distress in that regard. The amount payable is fixed at a flat rate of 3,500 Rand per month per employee for the duration of the period which the employer has shut its business, or a maximum period of 3 months, whichever is shorter. If an employee is ill, temporarily laid off, or unemployed for longer than 3 months, the normal UIF benefits will kick in, but the individual will have to apply in their own right to the UIF. It won't be done through the company. The benefits are delinked from normal UIF, and as such, the usual requirements that for every 4 days, etc., the formula doesn't apply. The flat rate offered in terms of the National Disaster Benefit may be more beneficial to employees than the TRS benefit, which calculates benefit in terms of sections 12 and 13, in other words, a sliding scale. Now, I know that for many of you, this will be the first time you're actually seeing this benefit as opposed to the temporary employee relief benefit. So let me stop for a moment and ask you, are there any questions in this regard? Are there any questions in this regard?
Hi.
Hello.
Hi, this is Robert. Question, please. Just a standard example. If the top end of the salary band, effectively, what would be the maximum amount that they would essentially receive under the TER scheme? Am I to understand that it would be a maximum of 38% of 17,712? 6,000.
Yes, exactly. So let's say you're earning 100,000 Rand a month, but UIF has been paid on your behalf. Then you are entitled, essentially you're entitled to the 6,000 Rand figure. And the way you get to that 6,000 Rand figure is it's 38% of 17,720 Rand.
So just to confirm, if you're earning 100,000 Rand, you can expect 6,700 Rand.
6,700 Rand back. In other words, because TER scheme has been capped.
Government is happy with that? They feel that is equitable?
Of course, I feel that's equitable because ultimately, at the end of the day, the TER scheme was initially created specifically for your blue collar employees. Ultimately, at the end of the day, they need to be spreading this amongst the employees as much as they can. Now, remember that this is an insurance policy. What you pay as UIF is negligible in terms of with respect to what your returns are from the UIF. And it's done on a massification basis. So it wasn't created essentially for your management or your CEO or your professional tier, but it was extended for that as an opportunity. But make no mistake, the TER scheme was created primarily to compensate your employees rather than the senior employees in the business.
Yeah, it's understood. It's exactly what I thought, and thank you. A second question, the National Disaster Benefit Fund, can that be claimed in addition to TERS?
It's one or the other for the individual. So it's claimed against the individual's ID number, and so it would be one or the other per individual.
Thanks very much.
Okay.
That's clear.
All right, excellent.
Can I just ask a question?
Sorry, there are two people talking. The one is Lana, the other one is Natalie. So can I ask Natalie to talk first?
Okay, so initially, when we were the day before lockdown, we gave the temporary layoff documentation, the ID documents to our staff to apply because at that stage, the TERS spreadsheet wasn't out yet. We have now subsequently submitted the TERS, but I suspect that my employees have submitted their documents to the UIF website and I've submitted TERS. Do you have any idea what will happen in that regard?
So what you have to do in that regard is you have to write a letter to the UIF to say that we'd implemented lockdown before TERS came out, and as such, whereas UIF has always dealt with the individual and not with the company, and we didn't know that TERS was to be implemented, each individual employee approached the UIF. We wish the UIF to know now that we've submitted the TERS application on behalf of all of the following employees, and therefore please deal with us rather than with the staff members themselves.
Okay, thank you.
Now, I just want to say something else. There are also companies that, because TERS wasn't out, the companies made employees take their normal leave that was due, and it's against that the company will pay the employees out, because remember, it's a no work, no pay situation beyond that. And then TERS was implemented. Now, TERS was implemented to try and help offset the fact that employees would need to take their normal leave due for the first percentage that is paid. So for the TERS amount that is paid, and it's only the balance that would then need to be deducted from the employee as normal leave. So your argument in this regard is we're going to process we're not going to process your leave. You filled in leave forms. We're not going to process your leave until such time as we've got a TERS amount back for you. And then we will only deduct the leave equivalent days of the balance between what TERS are paying us and what we've actually paid you at the end of the day. We'll only deduct that balance from your leave account, and the rest will be credited to you. So that needs to be your argument in writing to your employees, please. Does that make sense? Do you want me to repeat it?
Ava?
Yes. Renee?
So, yes, of course it's me. We did this TERS submission last night, so therefore this national disaster benefit must not be done by us.
No, because in many, well, not in many respects, any of your employees who were earning 3,500 Rand would have qualified through TERS for 100% of their 3,500 Rand in any case. You follow what I'm saying?
Okay. Yes.
So you don't need to do the national disaster benefit. It's only in the instance where, for example, let's say, for example, an employee is earning, just for argument's sake, let's say 5,000 Rand a month. And if you apply
Right.
the sliding scale to the employee comes out with 3,000 Rand UIF, not 3,500 Rand UIF. In that instance, a national disaster application would have got him 500 Rand extra, but he would have had to have done the application in his own right rather than through the company.
Okay, so this national disaster is not for the company to do.
No.
No. Okay, so the next question is this. We agreed to pay for the first 3 weeks, our staff. So I've now done this TERS submission.
Hold on. You
That
agreed
money
to pay. You agreed to pay them. You agreed to pay them, and that payment would be secured against their leave. That's the narrative.
No, we didn't say that.
What did you say?
We just said we will pay you up to and including the 16th of the month. So we didn't secure it against leave.
All right, that's
We
fine.
didn't secure it against
Okay,
anything.
so we will pay
Okay,
you
so
up until the
going
16th of the
forward-
month. We are going to apply for TER. When we get TER back, the only amount that will come out of our cash flow, the company's cash flow, will be the difference between the TER and what the person has been paid.
Okay, so that money is for us to keep and pay the difference to them for that 3 weeks.
So you are going to pay them, and you're going to offset the TER you receive against what you pay them.
Okay, fine.
Does that make
I've
sense?
got it.
Okay, good. Moving
Yeah,
on.
thank you.
Excellent.
Hi,
Sorry, just
Oh, sorry.
sorry.
Yeah, Mr. Desai first, and then Lana.
Iva, I just wanted to ask you two things. Firstly, I'm a dentist. We have essentially closed for the lockdown, but by law, we are essential health services. And if there is an emergency, we need to go in. So if I need to go in, I obviously would be breaking that 3-week lockdown scenario. How would that then affect myself and my staff? And secondly, you know, when you were talking of the TERS payment to us, the UIF, I mean, in nature has been very delayed and a slow process. People tend to get their money, 6, 8, 9 months later. I mean, now if the TERS benefits takes that long to get paid, how do we, keep our staff calm?
All right. So first of all, let me say this to you, Mr. Desai. Anybody who knows me will know that I certainly don't work for government or Department of Labor. However, let me say this to you. There is an issue of interest that has been included in the regulation. The issue of interest is this. We undertake to automatically pay you within 30 days of receipt and clearance of your invoice. So they've actually said that. They've said, we undertake that if you put the claim in by the 15th of the month, by the 15th of the following month, we will have paid you, which means that if they're not going to pay you in that 30-day period, a proper dispute of interest or dispute of right arises against the Department of Labor because they've not kept within their own deadline. Now, do I think that they will make those payments? Yes, I do. And here's why. Because they are on terms to the employees through the companies. There's a contractual obligation they've now incurred. They haven't said, as with normal UIF payments, we'll process and pay you as and when we're ready. They've actually said we are tying our flag to the 30-day mast. So I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt and say that in this instance they will pay. But certainly if you've listened to any of the interviews I've conducted, you will have heard people say there's no chance in hell that they'll end up making payment. However, I think it will be different in this situation because they're not dealing with the individuals. So they're not dealing with millions of people. They're dealing with companies. And remember, 125,000 companies in this country pay close to 40% of the income tax base from corporates. So, maybe there are 500,000 companies they're going to have to deal with as opposed to, 20 million employees. And the majority of the payment process has been automated as well. So I'm erring on the side of giving them benefit of the doubt, but let's wait and see what happens in that regard. As far as essential services are concerned, if you're in essential services, but for a variety of reasons you have elected to lock down, if you're in essential services, but for a variety of reasons you have elected to lock down, and your employees are not coming to work or et cetera, then you're entitled to apply for the TER funding And the bottom line is that if you can show you're in distress because you are locked down, irrespective of whether you're essential services or not, then in fact you will most probably qualify. They do say, by the way, that we reserve the right as far as essential services are concerned not to, but my feeling is you're in pretty safe ground applying. If, on the other hand, you dip in and you dip out, you are entitled to say that you write to them and say, when you submit your documents and you submit your, well, if you employ less than 10 people, you don't have to submit an MOA. But when you submit your documents to them and you invoice to them, you should be submitting a covering letter to say that of the 3 weeks, we're only claiming 2 weeks for this individual or that individual because they did have to come into work. And they will pay out accordingly. Their system is sophisticated enough for them to pay out accordingly if you work the spreadsheet properly. And remember, if you would have attended, and I know you did attend the previous workshop, I did make the forms available for the UIF TRS claims. You'll see that spreadsheet there. You might have to enter one person's name multiple times for different dates. So that's a reconciliation you'll need to do if it's in and out of emergency services or essential services. I know it's not a definitive answer, but I hope I've sort of answered your question. All right. Yes.
May I ask a question, CB?
Sorry, CB, before you, I know Lana wanted to ask something. Lana?
Sorry, as normal, it's a pretty loaded question. But first of all, is TRS easy to get to because I submitted UIF claims on behalf of one of my employees yesterday, and I did it the normal way, not realizing that this was something. And I remember when I was going through maternity benefits, how difficult it was, how many forms you need. I don't even know what boxes.
Lana, let me.
I find it a very complicated process.
Right. So let me answer you like this.
Process?
Let me answer you like this, Lana. TRS is the most politicized vehicle that has been implemented by Cyril Ramaphosa to appease employees, the blue-collar employees of this country who are laid off for the lockdown period. I feel comfortable that it is the one UIF scheme that they're not going to let slip. However, saying that, anything is possible. So I can't give you a definitive answer. I can't tell you how easy or difficult it's going to be, except to say that the TRS scheme is the politicized vehicle for justifying layoff to the majority of employees in this country. I doubt they're going to let it slip. But having said that, anything is possible, and we know that.
So would you be able to just, is there an actual email address or a website that is related to this TRS?
So Lana, I don't know, were you in my TRS webinar or not?
No, I wasn't. I only joined this morning.
Fine.
With my, Okay,
so do me a favor, just send me a WhatsApp and I will send you back the presentation, the webinar itself, and also the application forms.
Thank you so much. Sorry, just one more question. Sorry, it's actually two more questions. The one is, are we only applying for 3 weeks, and are we doing it as a maternity benefit in inverted commas because there is no option for this?
No, you're not doing it. Sorry, Lana, sorry. Let me interrupt you. You're not doing it as a maternity benefit.
Yeah.
The reference to maternity benefit is only because the sliding scale applies to maternity benefit, and it's the same sliding scale that applies to TRS. You're not doing anything with maternity benefits.
Okay, but before I knew of this TRS, I was doing it trying to tick a box, and there was no box when I was trying to do the normal UIF application. So I'm glad to know about this because it does make more sense. The other thing I wanted to know is, okay, so
sorry, Lana, I just need to come in here and say one. Yeah, so I'll answer that question, but let me just come in here and say something else. When you were applying to UIF, you were applying on behalf of your employee, right? Now,
that's correct.
Now you're applying as a company. You're not applying on behalf of the employee. You need to understand that distinction. All right. So is it only for 3 weeks? Well, in fact, the TR scheme has been licensed for 3 months. It's been made a provision for 3 months, or 3 months, which is 3 weeks or the full period of the lockdown up to a maximum of 3 months. So it's for the full period of a lockdown. So if the lockdown is extended, then provision has been made for TRS to be claimed for that extended period up to a maximum of 3 months.
Okay, thank you for clarifying.
Right. Okay. So
Stevie?
CV, yes, CV. Sorry, you've got a question.
May I ask, the invoice that's been referred to, is that the same as the spreadsheet, or is it another document that has to be
The spreadsheet,
generated?
the spreadsheet, together with your accompanying documents, and you know what those are, that constitutes the invoice.
Yes.
That constitutes the invoice.
Thank you very much.
Right.
May I ask another question?
Of course you can.
I've got one employee that we are paying from two different companies. Is it going to cause havoc if you are going to do, because you have to reconcile, and I don't want to put him in both companies, and then they tell me it's a duplication. Is there a way around this?
I don't know. If you're paying UIF twice, in other words, for each company you're paying separately UIF, you presumably legitimately have a claim for a claim, and you would submit them, one through the one company and the other through the other company. But you would have to submit it together with an explanatory letter right from the very beginning, because you can always then refer back to the explanatory letter if they get it wrong.
Thank you very much.
All right, excellent. Yes, who's that?
Hi.
Hello?
Lynn first. Yes, Lynn.
Yeah, I just wanted to find out. My accountant said that he would submit on behalf of.
Sorry, I can hardly hear you. Could everybody else just mute your microphone, please, because there's some background noise. Right, Lynn, please repeat again.
Yes, my accountant has submitted my UIF on behalf of my employees to claim from the UIF TERS. He said, though, that they each have to go into the bank and get a signed statement by the bank. Is this correct? Because it doesn't sound very easy.
No.
Yeah.
So if your accountant is submitting, he's submitting on behalf of the business, not the employee. The business is the sole applicant to the UIF. It's not the employees that are the sole applicants to the UIF. All you need is to be able to fill in the spreadsheet, because the spreadsheet will reconcile to the UIF payment details that you've been making on a monthly basis. The employees, the money doesn't get paid into the employee's bank account. The money gets paid into the company's bank account. So if your accountant was submitting for the employees, he wasn't submitting a TERS application. He was most probably submitting either a short-term application or one of the other UIF benefits. And we'll talk about those in a minute, but not the TERS benefit.
Perfect. Thank you.
All right. Excellent. Sorry, I wasn't shouting at you. I was just trying to be passionate. Yes, who's that?
This is Robert. Hi.
Hello, Robert.
Hello.
Yes, Robert.
Hi. 3 quick questions, and literally they'll be very quick. Just want to confirm, if the company has agreed to pay for the period of the lockdown, you can only claim TERS thereafter. Just, I might have come in. I'm sure that is the case.
No. So let me ask you a different question. What did you actually say to your employees? Dear employee, we will be paying you for the period of the lockdown.
We would agree to pay them up until the 16th. We'll agree to pay them up until the 16th.
That's fine. So now this is so it's a little bit the cart before the horse with respect to the second component, not the first component. So the first component is, that's fine. You've agreed to pay them. You will pay them up until the 16th. But to where you will get the money to pay them from will be the UIF TER application, at least insofar as per employee what TER will pay you out. All right? Because remember, you've been paying an insurance policy for these people called UIF, so you're entitled to claim against UIF. For this particular UIF feature, the payment will be made back to the company to offset against what you're going to pay them. All right? Now, if you wanted to push the envelope further, let's say just for argument's sake, you're going to pay them 1,000 Rand. UIF TER is only going to give you 400 Rand. That 600 Rand balance can be offset against their normal leave that they've got due.
I understand. I understand.
Or
So that-
you can
Matt-
say you're
sorry,
just
it's
going to pay
Natalie.
it yourself. Sorry, just let Robert finish his questions. Right. So your other
we're
questions
together.
are? Oh, all right. Okay.
So then, because the documentation is very clear that you can't claim for TERS if you're paying your employees.
No, it's not. In fact, the documentation is specific that you have to submit proof of the fact that you've paid your employees and then offset the TER against that.
That's
No.
I must be honest that we really did not read it like that. I'm an accountant, Natalie's a business owner, but be that as it may.
So
I'm
hold
very
on,
happy to hear
Robert.
about.
I'm very happy to send you the actual webinar we did on this. Let me explain to you what's going on.
Please, absolutely.
Right. So the basic condition of employment act says no work, no pay, right? The lockdown is causing a scenario of no work, no pay. You are undertaking to pay your employee, but where you're getting the money to pay your employee from is you're offsetting it against two places. You're offsetting the principal amount against TER and the secondary amount or the balance against their leave that is due. If they have no leave that is due, then the only amount that's going to be offset is the TER amount, and you're simply plugging the gap, which is specifically what the regulations say if you can do, you should do.
Yes.
Now, if you look at Schedule A at the back of the Memorandum of Agreement, you'll see there what you need to evidence for each of your claims over a 3-month period if it did extend for 3 months.
The Annexure A, I'm with you, Ivor.
Yeah. Can I say something to you? And this is with respect, you know I love you and I certainly love your wife, but this accountants and bookkeepers do not understand national policy ever. It takes them about a year to come right, and by then they've stuffed things up for their clients royally. Sorry, and you know I'm not talking about you, present company excluded. All right, moving on. All right, you had another question.
Ivor?
Yes.
The bank account, it has to be a new bank account.
No, it doesn't have to be a new bank account unless you're a bargaining council. In other words, unless you're doing it as an agent on behalf of your members. But what it should be, I think it should be, and I've said from the beginning, it should be a new bank account because it's money in, money out, and you need to account for that, and you don't necessarily want to cause a mess with with the balance of what's going on in your bank accounts.
Of course. Of course.
So
it's just
can I just explain something?
You can't get done.
Let me just explain why, all right? And it comes back to where the money comes from and what you're paying them. So remember that your staff are entitled to their leave. Now, the leave is what you're holding in a trust account for them, even if it's only in an account, all right? In a line item account in your balance sheet.
Right.
So you're holding that money in trust for them. The bottom line is what should happen into account, that money should be coming out of leave and going into the account as a payment to be made on payroll to those employees. And in fact, the UIF money should be coming into that account to offset it, because then it's clean and it's clear and it says no work, no pay. But where we're finding the money from is the leave that you have banked. Because remember, as an employer, we're entitled to say when you should take that leave within reason, and lockdown does constitute reason. All right, let's move on to other people's questions now. I know there were quite a few. Donna, I know you had a question.
Yes, please. Ivor, thank you for all this information you've put together. So the first question I have is, do you have somebody who can actually assist? Because as you stated, bookkeepers and accountants don't necessarily have the knowledge to do this. And I've been told by my accountant that he can't do it, but he would do the best he can at quite a cost. And my bookkeeper claims she can't do it. And I find it extremely complicated. Do you have anybody who can assist with this?
I can put you onto someone, Donna, but let me say this to you. I'm not actually understanding why it's, unless you've got thousands of employees, all right? How many employees have you got?
Around 20.
Okay, so you've got 20 employees. Now, the bottom line is it's one spreadsheet you have to fill out, and it's a memorandum of agreement that you have to sign essentially and fill out, which is a very simple document. And there's one email address that you send both of those things to. That is the full claim. That constitutes how you claim and how you invoice. So I'm not understanding in any terms whatsoever why your bookkeeper can't do it, number one, but more importantly, why you can't do it and save yourself that expense. It's
Well, there
one
are
spreadsheet.
a lot of documents. They're quite confusing, but maybe I need to look at them again. The other question I just needed to ask you, I will look at them more in depth after you answer and see if I can manage. The other question was, I asked a labour consultant when I first heard about this fund, and she sent me a layoff notice, which is what I gave my staff. When I checked with her what that actually means, she said it means no work, no pay. I then gave my staff the option of continuing to work, telling them that their salaries would be paid in one form or another, but they haven't really been working.
So how can you have given them the option of, so you're saying work from home?
Yes. Work from home, but they haven't been working from home or doing the absolute bare minimum.
It sounds like we're going to have to have this. It sounds like, Donna, it sounds like we have to have this discussion offline, and I'm happy to have it offline with you. Let's have this discussion offline. All right.
Okay. Thank you, Abba.
Sorry, I know I'm cutting a lot of you short, but it's just that I want to do a full review of all of the incentives, because that's what this discussion is about. There is a dedicated webinar on the UIF TER that I'm only too happy to post again and send to you. All right, so the existing UIF benefits that the individuals would apply for: unemployment benefits, illness benefits, maternity benefits, parental benefits, adoption benefits, and dependence benefits. Now, those are all benefits that would be applied for by the employee themselves. They're available. They're part of the insurance policy of the Unemployment Insurance Fund, but they're not the TER. The TER system is the only program that is applied for by the company. All of these other programs are applied for by the individuals. Now, the one thing that you need to know is that these benefits here may not be claimed simultaneously to the TER benefit. So these benefits here may not be claimed simultaneously to the TER benefit. The unemployment benefit, if an employee claims unemployment benefit because of the lockdown, he's actually saying that you, the employer, have committed an unfair labor practice by retrenching him or by dismissing him or by firing him. You are not allowed, for purposes of the lockdown or because of the reason of the lockdown, you are not allowed to fire or retrench someone. If there was a pre-existing Section 189 process in play, in other words, you were in the process of retrenching, then you can say the lockdown exacerbated it, but it's not because of the lockdown that you would be retrenching. So I cannot emphasize that enough. You're creating a whip for your own back when the CCMA opens again, or bargaining councils open again, or if you've done it for more than one employee, when the labor court opens again, if you have retrenched because of the lockdown. You need to understand that, ladies and gentlemen. Before I move any further on that specific point, are there any questions about what I've just said? Because it's critically important. It can ruin your business before you even reopen.
I have a question. I didn't know about TERS yesterday and submitted, as I said, to 3 different email addresses on my employee's behalf. Sorry, I know you mentioned it earlier. So I now need to write to them and say, please cancel that. I'm going to apply with TERS.
Yes, you can do that. And
Okay,
I would do that, unless you've done the calculations to determine that the employee would get more out of the individual benefit than the TERS benefit.
Okay.
All right, moving on. All right, so now we move to the next category, which is Compensation for Occupational Injuries and Disease Act. So COVID-19 has been declared to be a compensatable, sorry about my spelling, compensatable disease in terms of the Compensation for Occupational Injuries and Disease Act. Compensation is provided for occupationally acquired COVID-19, which means that the disease is contracted by an employee arising out of and in the course of his or her employment. So in the instance where before lockdown, your employee had contracted an occupational injury or disease called TERS, or was in quarantine, medically induced quarantine. The doctor had said you've got to go into your 14-day quarantine, or in fact, besides testing positive, had started to incur the symptoms, then the following would apply. TTD, which is temporary total disablement, is a level of disability which renders an employee completely unable to render any job function on a temporary basis. TTD payments shall be made for as long as the disablement continues, but not for a period exceeding 30 days. In terms of suspected and unconfirmed cases, an employee must abide by self-quarantine practices recommended by WHO, and the employer will be liable for remuneration for the days of absence. In respect of confirmed TTD, shall be paid from the date of diagnosis up to 30 days. Now, when we say the employer should be liable for remuneration for the days of absence, that is as sick leave if it happened before lockdown, or in fact, if you are an essential service provider but one of your employees gets sick. So there is a separate insurance through the UIF for this purpose, and the compensation fund will pay you out in that regard. I think maybe that's where Robert was saying it might take 6 months to get that payment. I don't know. I don't know whether they're going to expedite these payments. All right. In the event that there are complications, the Commissioner has a right to review the case. In all accepted cases of COVID, medical aid shall be provided for a period of not more than 30 days from the date of diagnosis. That's through UIF. If an employee dies as a result of occupationally acquired COVID-19, reasonable burial expenses and widow and dependent pensions shall be payable where applicable. So again, that's part of the UIF insurance policy for a occupational injury or disease. A domestic, now this is important. I've been asked this question so many times. A domestic employee employed in a private household is not covered by compensation for occupational injuries and diseases. And the employer may be liable for these costs, if a person gets sick but can prove that it's on the job. In other words, if I contracted COVID and I passed it on to my domestic, and my domestic could show the nexus or the link, then there might be a claim from the domestic against me for the medication, for the doctor's bills, and for the recuperation time, because they wouldn't ordinarily have access to UIF, even though UIF is actually paid on their behalf. It's just one of those niggles in the process that hasn't been sorted out. All right. So the debt relief finance scheme. Well, the debt relief, and this is a small business development now. So we move off of Department of Labor and the UIF, we move to small business development. The debt relief fund is designed and tailored to provide financial relief on current debts and repayment of small, medium, and micro enterprises. In order to qualify for assistance for funding, the SMME must demonstrate the direct relation connection of the impact or the potential impact of the COVID-19 pandemic on its business operation. The debt relief fund will also assist entities in acquiring raw material, paying labor, and other operational costs. To access the necessary finances, SMMEs are required to register on the SMME portal. And this will require SMMEs to provide general information such as details of its shareholders, their employee demographics, and whether they require financial assistance or non-financial assistance, amongst other information. Now, we have it on good authority that as far as debt relief finance itself is concerned, the 51% black-owned principle, which applies to the other SMME scheme, will not be applied. So we have it on good authority from the Minister that no black majority shareholding or control of the business will be required for an SMME to qualify for debt relief finance. Okay. In order to qualify for financial assistance, small businesses must meet the following criteria. 100% owned by South African citizens, employ at least 70% South African nationals, which tells you then you can have 30% Zimbabwean or Nigerian or Ghanaians working for you. Be registered with SARS. Be tax compliant. And by the way, I did send out a message yesterday, I think, to say that, and thank you for pointing this out to me, Michael, SARS no longer gives tax compliance certificates. They give a tax a PIN number. They give a compliance PIN number. That anyone wanting to know if you're compliant will simply go onto the SARS site, insert the PIN number, and it'll say whether your business is compliant or not. They must have been registered with CIPC by at least the 28th of February this year. So they must be a registered business with CIPC. And you must have registered on the smmesa.gov.za site. Priority will be given to businesses owned by women, youth, and people with disabilities. So the vulnerable groups will get priority. But I would say it's in every SMME's best interest to apply for the debt relief finance scheme by registering on that site, which is smmesa.gov.za. I think there's a good chance that there will be a surplus of funding available, and if it's properly run and there's no corruption in the running of it, there'll be a surplus of funding available for small businesses genuinely, and you should be able to qualify in that regard, should you be able to prove a case, which is we've got loss, we're trading, we've got loss, we need to cover those losses. So the Business Growth Resilience Facility, also by the Small Business Development Department. The key difference between debt relief and business growth resilience is that the facility, the resilience facility, acts as a soft loan and is targeted toward SMEs that are manufacturing essential goods. Now, I need to say right at the offset that this is where the minister spoke with forked tongue. She lied to the public, because it is here where the 51% black-owned requirement kicks in. If you're not a 51% black-owned business, black-controlled business, you shouldn't even be looking at business growth or resilience. The establishment of the Business Growth Resilience Facility has been specifically designed and tailored to ensure autonomy and ultimate success of black SMEs in South Africa. The COVID-19 pandemic has had a severe impact on the financial prosperity of SMEs, etc. In accordance with National Treasury Note, the facility will provide reprieve for SMEs by offering a diverse range of financing options, seeking to alleviate the impact of COVID-19 if the companies can provide masks, gloves, ventilators, all of the things which are on a list, which are on the SMME site, which are linked to essential services. So these are companies that manufacture or supply products as listed in the instruction note. SMMEs operating in logistical sphere are also invited to enroll on the website for support. And really, it is just about the kind of SMME you are, how what you do is linked to essential service functioning in this country, and then whether or not you are 51% black owned. All right, we have covered this before, so I'm not going to cover it again. What are you going to get money for? Working capital, direct costs, stock, bridging finance, purchase order finance, and capital equipment finance that manufacture locally or supply items which are in demand due to the pandemic. The loan facility provided at prime less 5%. Priority will be given to businesses owned by women, youth, and people with disabilities. And you would find more information at smmesa.gov.za. All right. Now let's move to the National Empowerment Fund, because the National Empowerment Fund, the NEF, which is run by NAFCOC, National African Federation Chamber of Commerce, is exactly the same as the Business Growth Resilience Facility offered by Small Business Development. And in fact, you will find that the Small Business Development has either duplicated the fund or it's outsourced the management of that fund to NAFCOC through the National Empowerment Fund. But essentially, funding for working capital, machinery, and equipment to manufacture and supply a range of medical products, $500,000 to $10 million concessionary loan for black-owned businesses with existing retail supplier relationships, up to 60 months repayment, zero interest in the first year. And again, there you would apply to nefcorp.co.za. If you're a level 2 business, a triple BE rated level 2 business, you qualify for funding here, and it is good funding. That's available through the National Empowerment Fund. Now, the other scheme which is now being created is Spaza Shop Support Scheme. And this scheme will assist owner-operated spaza shops with seed and network capital or business buying and access to business support tools such as bookkeeping. It will enable spaza shop operators to continue to operate. South African citizens seeking to register for support required to have SA identity, a permit to trade, which you obtain through Biz Portal, whilst foreign spaza shop owners are required to be admitted to South Africa lawfully and hold valid passports with relevant businesses, visas, or permits allowing them to work or operate a business. I'm not going to spend too much time on the spaza shop discussion because it's just too much to cover, but it is in a slide and it is in this presentation. Then there's something called the Tourism Relief Fund if you're in the tourism sector, a 200 million rand fund that's been put together by the Department of Tourism to assist SMEs and various tourism subsectors. Preference given to SMMEs in rural areas and townships and those owned by women, young people, and people with disabilities. So the the entry-level component of the tourism sector. This fund is being created to help keep those businesses alive. And the criteria are: operators will be required to obtain a permit to trade. Department of Small Business Development will also assist operators to register with South African Revenue Services, UIF, etc., etc. Operators must be willing to buy locally made goods from designated South African small businesses. And the scheme will encourage spas and shops to meet the required hygiene requirements. 200 million rand in that fund. Right, then there's so that 200 million rand fund has been made available, as we've said, preference in the rural areas, etc. Then there's a sports, art, and culture relief fund. Sports, arts, and culture relief fund, 150 million rand fund for cancelled events, digital solutions, and a wide array of projects. Now, I've heard many people who've said we're in the event management business, we're going bankrupt. There's nothing we can do here. And so a fund has been created, 150 million rand fund for those kinds of businesses, where you can show that events have been cancelled, or you can show that you've had for your clients to put together digital solutions and a wide array of projects. There are no triple BE criteria that have been made available in the criteria up front. One would hate to think, for argument's sake, that in creating a website for a specific government department, that would qualify for the 100 million rand of funding. Although we have seen that there have been tenders which have been, not tenders, there have been contracts over the last week that have been awarded that have not gone through tender processes. One would hate to think that government departments are getting the funding from this particular fund, which was created by government, and time will tell whether that is the case. Agriculture, there's 150 million rand agricultural relief fund for cancelled events, digital solutions, and a wide array of projects. As far as municipalities are concerned, the point that's being made in this slide is municipalities have not generally come to the party, but those that have, and there's an example here of the Stellenbosch municipality. Now, ladies and gentlemen, let me say this to you. If you have a lease with a landlord, and the landlord says to you, at the very least, we expect you to pay your rates and taxes and services, because that's what we have to pay to the municipality. You can make it a condition of paying the rates and taxes and services to the landlord. You can make it conditional upon proof that the landlord has approached the municipality and asked for some kind of concession. Because government have in fact implored SALGA, the South African Local Government Authority, to which all the municipalities belong, to actually enter into an engagement on the following kinds of things that the Stellenbosch municipality did in fact do. So, for example, Stellenbosch municipality said to their ratepayers, we'll give you a payment reprieve or a holiday on property rates for the months of April, May, and June, for those 3 months. So you won't have to pay rates for April, May, and June. We won't charge you interest for property rates billed over that period either, because remember, it's automatically set up on our system. We'll give you free basic water allocation for indigent residents from 6 litres at the moment to 10 kilolitres per household from the 1st of April for those 3-month periods, and a temporary suspension of all credit control measures and procedures until the end of April, meaning that all electricity meters that were blocked, etc., will be opened, basically, so that residents won't be punished by the lockdown process. That's what Stellenbosch has done. Other municipalities have been very quiet to come to the party, though, in this regard. So, for example, we hear that Johannesburg will reconnect all residents whose water and lights were cut due to non-payment. And Johannesburg is considering relaxing some credit control policies to give businesses some relief during the 21-day lockdown. Hasn't been done yet. But and then also many municipalities are not implementing credit control measures during the lockdown period. It could be argued that they've never been on top of their credit control measures. So not implementing simply means that the people who were trying previously are now at home, locked down and therefore not doing their jobs. That's all that can mean. So I'm pretty skeptical about what you'll get from municipalities. However, again, I say to you, in dealing with your landlords, reserve the right that evidence is presented to you. If you're going to come to the party somewhat with your landlord, reserve the right to see an effort that your landlord has made with its own municipality in trying to obtain some kind of reprieve. And if it does, passing that reprieve on to you, the tenants, in that particular shopping center or that particular building. All right. Now, as far as the retail, any questions, by the way? I know I'm shooting through it, but there's quite a lot to get through. But any questions that you want to ask before I carry on? Okay, let's carry on then. So the retail sector, if you're in retail, you might have seen about 2 weeks ago that the Minister of Trade and Industry announced that there was a block exemption for the retail property sector from competition laws. Now, competition laws generally prohibit tenants from talking to one another about costings and rates and leases, etc. They certainly prevent landlords from talking to each other where they all settle on the same amount of rates they're going to charge their tenants. And they prevent associations from trying to create a commonality of rates and a commonality of ways of dealing with tenants, because they say that's anti-competitive behavior, and that's what the Competition Act is there for. But what happened is that SAPOA, the Shopping Centre Association, and SA Rates approached the minister to do a block exemption, which will then allow engagement to take place amongst property owners around what they're going to do about tenants who won't pay. And that's currently the case, that the sector is not held to normal competition rules, which are there against collusion. They deal with issues against collusion. So the exemption applies solely to agreements or practices related to payment holidays. So in other words, allowing landlords to give payment holidays, rental discounts, limitations on eviction, limitations on suspension or adjustments to lease agreements. What it does is it restricts the exemption to clothing, footwear, home textile, personal care services, and restaurant sectors, including small and independent retailers. But you can take it that it basically relates to any business in any shopping center or commercial property. Okay. The next program is the Industrial Development Corporation's Working Support Capital Program. The IDC has a provision of short-term working capital loans that it gives out for mining and minerals, for agricultural businesses, for agro-processing businesses, and in the automotive sector. It's been put on terms to make whatever is available urgently available and accessible to companies in those various industries. Then the other IDC scheme we want to talk about is the Essential Supplies Intervention. Soft loans for companies for the acquisition and or manufacturing of essential supplies on an urgent basis to combat the pandemic. Short-term 3-month loans available for once-off contract or import funding. Must have contract orders in place or proof of demand. And you can go to idc.co.za. The criteria are traditional criteria. There's nothing there that's fancy. And again, the IDC has been put on terms to urgently release that money into the sector, particularly around essential goods for essential services. Then we've got the South African Futures Trust. And the South African Futures Trust here has a salary support for SMMEs, greater than 25 million rand less than 25 million rand annual revenue, must be under stress directly due to COVID outbreak and in strong financial position prior to the crisis. Interest-free loan with 5-year term paid directly to employees from banks, 750 rand per qualifying employee per week over a maximum period of 15 weeks, or 11,250 rand per permanent employee for the period. It's released through Standard Bank, through Nedbank, through FNB, through ABSA to manage. And these are the Oppenheimer funds, the Motsepe funds, which fund this process. So I know many of you have been very disappointed with the Sakuma fund, the Johan Rupert fund, because it was completely topped up within 3 days. The applications topped it off within 3 days. This is another one of those funds. And as you can see, actually better. It's interest-free, whereas the Johan Rupert one was a 5-year loan, but after the first year, interest kicks in. With the SAFT loans that are available, or with the SAFT grants that are available, it's interest-free for that 5-year period. And it's available through the banks rather than through the Industrial Development Corporation, which tells you it could be more efficiently managed, if those banks are open or if they're accessible. As you know, with Standard Bank, with FNB, I'm not sure about Nedbank or Absa. It's very difficult to find someone you can talk to because everything's done online. But I would go onto those websites. I would look for the South African Future Trust application process, and I would try and do that as quickly as possible before that money runs out. I think there's something like, in total, I think there's roughly about 2 billion rand in that fund, as opposed to the Rupert Fund, which only had 1 billion rand sitting in it. As far as SARS is concerned, SARS have...
Hi, Ivor.
Yes, sorry, who's that? Oh, it's Mr. Desai again.
It's,
yes.
come on.
Yes.
Sorry, can I just ask you something? So I applied to both those funds, and the Johan Rupert one, they sent an email reply with reference numbers and everything like that. The South African Future Trust, absolutely nothing. Just on the screen to say your application is submitted. No ways. So I've done it through Standard Bank.
All right.
How do you follow up with this the South African Future Trust?
I don't know.
Okay.
I will. Sorry, I don't want to be so blunt.
No stress.
I don't know. But what I will do is I will find out for you. I can't promise it'll be before Monday.
Thank you.
But I certainly will find out for you, because quite frankly, they are private trusts that have been created. But the banks themselves have a fiduciary responsibility to be transparent. So if they're not being transparent, we need to know why. They could say, but hold on a moment, the majority of our people are on lockdown. It's an automated process. We've not completed the automated process development yet. Things like that, which is perfectly understandable. But we need to find out. And so we will find out.
Thank you.
What was good, and I was just reading your earlier comment, it was great to see that you received a positive reply back from the Johan Rupert Fund, because, it might take a while for them to confirm, but at least you've got your foot in the door there, and you're one of the very few who would have qualified. So congratulations on that, sir.
Ivor, I just want to ask you the debt relief scheme as well. It says that the online application will be loaded on the 2nd of April. You still can't apply online, so how do we apply? I even sent email, but no reply.
Sorry, Marinda, which scheme are you talking about?
On the debt relief scheme, it's the same, that you can't actually apply online.
You're talking about the SMME debt relief scheme?
Yeah.
What I mean is, you talk about the debt relief scheme, which is managed by the SMME department itself through the portal. Okay,
yes.
you're gonna. So remember, you're applying for debt relief in relation to the lockdown period. You will ordinarily only need to be processing that application and submitting that application at the end of the lockdown period. You can't apply in advance. So the bottom line is, what they're saying is, just give them a little bit of time to get their act together.
Perfect. Thank you.
Do I anticipate, I'm answering my own question, it's a rhetorical question. Do I anticipate down the line that there might be some kind of class action challenge against particularly the SMME department for not only how it's managed its schemes, and I'm singling out the SMME department because I've got faith that the DTI will sort of do what they say they're going to do, and the other organizations. My concern about the SMME department, and I don't have any facts to back it up at this stage, but my concern is that there is a lot of blocking of legitimate applications, because at the same time there is the potential for a lot of corruption to be taking place in the process. Because quite frankly, as far as the SMME department itself is concerned, nothing is working. The minister is lying to the public when she goes on television. Nothing is working. And what that normally indicates is it's not negligence. It's not just incompetence. It is consciously trying to obfuscate a process so that corruption can take place. So I would imagine over the next 6 months to a year, watch this space as far as the SMME department is concerned and how it's managing the public money which has been entrusted to it. I don't have the same concerns about any of the other departments, but I have that concern about the SMME department because of who their partners are. NAFCOC, the National Empowerment Fund. I'm very suspicious of how the SMME department is managing its funds. I hope I'm completely proven incorrectly, and that they come out shining with lots of loans to all the right kinds of companies. I have my doubts.
Ivor, can I ask a question, please?
Of course, yes, Gary.
I went onto the SMME first page and filled out all the information they requested. But when I look on the debt relief page for the qualification, it says you've got to upload supporting documents, but there's nowhere to upload supporting documents.
All right. So do they give you an email address?
They gave me a registration number that my SME had registered with them, but that was it.
Did you not get any email address? Because there are email addresses on that website that you can be utilizing and sending through your supporting documentation. I'll tell you why you should do that. Even if you send it.
There is, sorry to interject, there is, but I found out later. So if you go onto that same form that you filled out, at the top, there's 3 links. And the one says COVID-19 something. And if you click on that link, it gives you all the, and I never knew to do that. I only did that very recently. But what I didn't get is I didn't get a reference number from that initial application, even though they said it had been submitted. But if you go onto that form, there are 3 links at the top, which are, as I said, they're not that easy to see. And the one says COVID-19. And when you click on that, it enables you to not upload the documents, but it does give you an email address to send all the related documents.
Okay, yes. All right. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that, Lana. You see, that's what a community of practice means. All right. So the essential supplies intervention is the next IDC scheme. Soft loan for companies, as I've said. Okay, we've covered this one. Okay, so moving on. Covered that one. Okay, the IDC working capital support, provision of short-term working capital of the mine. Oh, we've just covered that one as well. Okay, no, hold on. Sorry, I'm going backwards rather than forwards. Okay, SARS. SARS have 1, 2, 3, 4 categories that you need to be aware of. The PAYE benefit, where you can defer 20% of your PAYE liabilities over the next 4 months. Remember, it's deferring your liabilities. It's not a PAYE holiday, which means you will have to then repay that money that you've deferred. You will have to repay at some stage, or SARS reserves the right to, in fact, write it off. Robert, you would be better to comment on this than I am, but I don't see SARS ever simply writing that amount off. But at the moment, the 20% deferment is allowed. Then provisional tax. As far as provisional tax is concerned, you will be required to pay only 15% of your total estimated provisional tax for the first provisional tax period, unless the lockdown is extended. As far as the employment tax incentive is concerned, massive, massive, massive benefit. You need to know about it. If you're not using ETI, please just send me a WhatsApp and I will deal with you on a one-by-one basis. But if you're not using ETI, that's been going for the last 6 years, then again, your bookkeeper's been making a mistake, your accountant's been making a mistake, because essentially what it means for you is you're able to supplement payroll out of your PAYE. And that has now been extended in terms of the amounts you can supplement. And it's also been extended to the fact that anyone between the ages of 30 and 65 in your business, you can also supplement, earning less than 6,500 Rand. So there's not that many of those people, but you can also supplement by an additional 500 Rand from PAYE and build up, if you want, build up a debt that SARS owes you or PAYE owes you down the line when your business picks up again, and you need to set some of your PAYE off and push that into your payroll. So please, ETI is a specialized subject all on its own. I have run a webinar on that before. I'm only too happy to make that available to you. But please have a discussion with me if you want to know about ETI, because quite frankly, to not use ETI is sacrilegious as far as I'm concerned. All right, ladies and gentlemen, there are other funds. There are lots of other funds which have been made available. There are many 12J businesses. Now, 12J businesses are annual opportunities for venture creation investment businesses to be created, where a percentage of your tax can be offset into those businesses, invested in those businesses, and you end up with tax-free dividends and tax-free capital recoupment. Fantastic. So there are 12J benefits out there that are now being used as relief mechanisms as well, and 2 of those have been sent to me. I will complement these slides with those 2 mechanisms as well, because it will be well worth your while applying for those benefits as well. So what I've done, and I know it's haphazard and it's all over the place, but what I tried to do this morning is I tried to say, as we're going into Easter, as we're going into Passover, as we're most probably going to have 2 or 3 or 4 days off without communication, just consider all of the opportunities that are out there in terms of what I've already covered, plus the ones that you might know about or hear about. All of those opportunities are there. Only some of them are biased and skewed. The others are working, and they're working well. And I think it's amazing how civil society has come to the party. Government needs to come more to the party than they've come to in terms of some of these programs. But I think civil society has been admirable in the work that it's done. And I think we need to thank them for that. So, ladies and gentlemen, any final questions?
CV,
Yes, CV.
will these slides be available on a website, or can we send an email so that we can get all the slides together?
So I tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to repost all of the webinars, all of the documents on each of our 3 WhatsApp groups. The WhatsApp groups is the COVID CEO or the COVID business WhatsApp group, the CITA group, and then the CITA member group. I'm just going to repost all of the documents there for you so that you can download from there. And it's very easy if you do have it on WhatsApp. Alternatively, if you want it on email, then what I'd like you to do then, please, is send an email to IVORB.
Yes.
Yeah, let me just do this quickly. I'll do that over here. ivorb@arcconsult.com. If you want it on email, then just send me an email to ivorb@arcconsult.com. I'm just going to make that bigger for you to be able to see. ivorb@arcconsult.com. There you go. ivorb@arcconsult.com, and that will then allow me to put you on an email distribution list for all of the webinars and all of the tools that have previously been sent out. I'm very happy to say, ladies and gentlemen, I just want to quickly show you. What we've done so far. If I can just quickly pull it up, just to show you reference. Just give me 1 second, because we have, I think by now we've actually got 8 webinars that we've run over the last week. So let me just move this onto the screen so that you can see it now. So you can see here that we've actually had 8 webinars that have been run. In fact, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 webinars that in fact will have reference to you. The first is in the normal course of events, how you're dealing with disability in your business, then it's employers and COVID with the release of the regulations. It is the CEO Forum webinar, planning for the shutdown. It is the final lockdown regulations that we ran a webinar on. It's managing special programs such as learnerships and YES, because some companies are already linked into those during the time of lockdown. It's the ETI draft regulation that I was referring to in the course of today's discussion. And those slides are also available. That presentation is available. It's how to apply for the TER subsidy. In other words, taking you through the entire process. It's the accessing UFTER. So that was for a different group, same presentation. Then it was how to apply for the Johan Rupert Sakuma Fund. And then finally, it was the launch for the tenants of the Tenants Association and what tenants should be doing in relation to their relationship with landlords. And today's webinar will be then put up as the 9th, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, as the 11th webinar. And so we'll put together a distribution list for all of these webinars. And like I say, wherever there are presentations which have been done, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 presentations have been done, all of those presentations are also available in terms of the slides. Good. Okay. Guys, thank you very much.
Sorry.
Yes.
Ivor, can I ask one quick question?
Of course you can.
I'm still grappling because we've got a legal opinion from a reputable attorney that has specifically put in writing that you cannot apply for TERS if you are paying your staff.
No. So, Natalie, I'm
So
going to
now
say
I'm
it to you.
completely confused.
I'm going to say it to you again. If you are locked
Yep.
down, all right, and
Yep.
if you have elected to pay your staff, but not offset those payments against leave and not offset those payments against TER, then you're not going to apply for TER. If you do want to apply for
Yep.
TER, then what you're going to do, and I don't even want to think who that attorney was, but if you are going to apply for
Yep.
TER, then the payments you are making are payments in relation to the leave which is due to the person, because you are asserting the fact that in terms of the Basic Conditions of Employment Act, it is no work, no pay.
Okay. All
Now,
right.
what you can
Thank
do,
you
there are
kindly.
some
That
people,
helps.
who fall into specific industries where there are, in fact, determinations by bargaining councils, and I think here of the clothing bargaining council, that says over and above the leave pay that a person is due, we have agreed that employers in this industry will pay 5 extra days of special leave.
Yep.
So it's TER, then special leave, and then leave pay, and then unpaid leave pay. So that's the sequence of events.
Okay. All right. So, I mean, so technically, when we apply for TERS now, we would not have paid for April yet, but we are applying in lieu of the fact that we will pay them
So you will pay
what
at
we
the
get from
end.
TERS.
So basically, you will make an application after the 15th. You will make an application, or after the 16th. You will make an application for the 3 weeks worth of TERS subsidy.
No, we've already made one, but technically, that payment will only be due on the 25th, like a normal salary run.
No, I don't know what you're
So
referring
would we
to.
pay our
How
staff?
would you already have made a TERS payment?
No, not a TERS payment, a TERS application.
So you applied for 1 week's worth of TERS, right?
No, we applied for 3 weeks on the basis we're going to be locked down until the 16th.
So the memorandum of agreement says that you will apply after the 15th of the month.
Okay, all right, that we did not get.
Have you done an
Okay,
MOA?
so, yeah.
Well, in the MOA, it specifically says that.
So is it okay? All right. Well, then obviously I didn't see that clearly.
That expensive lawyer
yeah,
should have picked that up.
Yeah, I mean, listen, we're part of a franchise group, so I mean, I'm guided by the franchisor, but
All right.
clearly I shouldn't be.
Good.
So,
Okay,
yeah,
sorry. There's another question there.
Arthur, hi, this is Paul.
Hello, Paul.
How are you doing? Arthur, just a quick one here. There's 2 questions. Can we claim the TERS if we have been offered a loan from the SAF Trust?
Can you claim TERS?
So in other words,
offered a loan from.
In other words, Oppenheimer's come back and said we're offering you this loan to cover salaries.
No, then you can't, because what the MOA says is you're not getting funding from any other source. You're in distress. You have to prove you're in distress. That's a good question, Paul. Let me tell you why that's a good question. Because you can't claim TERS. However, if the Oppenheimer fund comes back and says, look, out of every rand we'll give you 50 cents for argument's sake, then what you can do is you can go to the relief fund, the UIF relief fund, the first 3,500 rand one. And claim from there the difference between the Oppenheimer Trust would pay you and what that is, what you would get from that fund. I'm not saying you would automatically qualify for either, but you can certainly try. But you can't do that. You can't have one source of funding but claim to be in distress, i.e., I've got no money or cash flow.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's only to cover 750 a week.
But it's only covering 750 rand a week. That Oppenheimer fund.
I understand.
Yeah,
but
I don't think
you've got sorry, can I say I don't think you've got a problem with the Oppenheimer fund. I think you've got a problem with the UIF.
No. Okay. All right. Got you. We'll go into that other one then.
But I do want to re-emphasize what I just said to Natalie, and this is very important. So the principle is this, that before TERS, you would have asked an employee, because it's no work, no pay, you would have said to the employer, the only way we can pay you out is if you cash in your leave. And then if there's not enough leave, then the rest will be unfunded leave, all right? Unpaid leave. Now with TRS, you first go to TRS, the balance is paid out of your leave that is due, and only then do you move to unfunded. But you can give the employee the option. You must give the employee the option. For the balance after TRS, do we regard the balance as something we're not going to pay you, or in fact, do you want to take it out of leave?
Yeah. No, that's good. And the last question, Ava, if you don't mind, Sakuma Relief Fund. Okay.
Yes.
If you take out the loan from the Oppenheimer, right, to take up the offer, which covers employees only, does that jeopardize any of your acceptance by the Sakuma? Do you think? No.
So you would qualify for your 25,000 Rand grant. I have no doubt in my mind about that. Yeah. And as far as the loan is concerned, you're not precluded from lending money from multiple sources in Sakuma.
Okay, cool. That makes sense to me. All right. So if we receive the response from the Sakuma Fund, just the email response, the SMS response, does that mean they've taken our registration?
I don't know.
They've given us a reference number.
Honestly, I don't know. What the reference number could be is it could be as little as, well, we've acknowledged your submission, to as much as, well, we have actually agreed to pay you out. I don't know.
Or you're in the process.
Or you're in the process. If you're in the process, it means we're looking for more money. If we get more money, then you've been pre-processed, so you will preferentially be dealt with.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. All right. Thanks, Ava.
But you guys in Cape Town, you smoke a different weed, so I don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah. No. But don't worry about that. That's why we're down in lockdown.
All right, guys. Look, thank you all. This webinar, for what it's worth, will be distributed, will be sent out, as well as these slides. And we'll try and supplement these slides as and when things become available in the marketplace. I'm certain about one thing. I'm certain that Sakuma will find supplementary funding. And that's why business partners have said we've just suspended the application process, not we've closed it down. Because I'm certain the system is working, Sakuma's system is working sufficiently for them to say, we've got a system, put more money in, and we'll have a system that's actually working and will be very, very good. I actually think that they'll secure matching government funding. You know that Treasury has just released a huge amount of money in terms of buying up bonds. And so that money that's been released, some of it I think will go back into the Sakuma funds. But I stand open to correction. Anything can happen here. If there is an extension of lockdown next week, let me end off by saying this. If there's an extension of lockdown next week, what it will mean then is that the TER scheme will continue for the full period of the lockdown as long as the lockdown doesn't go beyond 3 months, because an amount has been set aside for that 3-month period for what the UIF know they're actually insuring or covering. If it does go beyond 3 months, I have no doubt that the government will extend the TER scheme, because politically it would be suicidal for them not to do that. So there will certainly be a certain amount of money to supplement your payroll. I don't ever think it's going to be enough, but certainly a certain amount of money to supplement your payroll. In your discussion with your employees, you have to make the issue of risk very clear. This risk has got nothing to do with my business. I will share the risk in terms of cash flowing payments to you, where I can recoup some or all of those payments. But the risk ultimately is a political, national, social risk. It's not a corporate risk. And so while we might want to share the risk with you, we're certainly not as business going to take the risk on our shoulders completely. And that's the narrative of the discussion you need to have with your employees, ladies and gentlemen. People need to own the solution as well as own the problem as well as the solution, I think. Good. Thank you so much all for joining me. It's been a scintillating discussion. I know it's been all over the place. I do apologize for that. But I just wanted to basically give you something to go into Easter or into Passover with, knowing that, everyone is trying. And I think this is a national effort. So again, thank you all for joining me. I really do appreciate your time.